Greetings, my friends, patriots, lovers of democracy, truth, and justice, believers in peace, freedom, and the American way. Thom Hartmann here with you back from Cuba, or whatever you want to call it. That was a fascinating week. Louise and I went with a group from Code Pink. Code Pink sponsors through a company called Proximity Tours a couple of these a year, and we just Medea about a year ago had invited us to go on one, and we were not able to at that time. That was back last September. And so when this one came along, I was like, yeah, cool. And in fact, there were 4 or 5 people on the trip who heard me talk about it on the air and signed up for the trip. And we met some great people, some new friends, and just had a wonderful time. If you have been to Cuba, or if you feel that you know a lot about Cuba and you'd like to discuss it, I want to talk about that in our first hour today, although we're going to try later on in the week. I've got 3 hours of interviews and videotape and all kinds of stuff that we need to boil down. So later in the week, or maybe next week, we're going to actually do a show specifically about our trip to Cuba, kind of our travelogue thing. But I just want to share with you some of my observations, and particularly if you've been there, and I know that there were a lot of Americans who went during the, year and a half, 2 years, or maybe it was a little less than that, that President Obama had loosened all the travel restrictions. Just to be clear, by the way, if anybody from the State Department is listening, we did not go as tourists. It is not legal for Americans to go to Cuba as tourists. We went on this people-to-people tour literally every day from 9 o'clock in the morning till around 5 or 6 in the afternoon. We were going to the colleges, going to the agricultural stations, going to the university, going to craft, businesses. I mean, it was basically get to know the country. It's kind of ironic, because if you're a Cuban, you can go anywhere in the world and do anything you want. If you're an American and you go to Cuba and you go hang out on the beach and have a vacation, you can get in big trouble, maybe go to jail, I don't know. But we were told you are not, it is not legal for you to vacation here. We did not vacation, which is kind of weird. It would have been nice to have a day on the beach, but I never even got near the beach. So what I learned, that the Cuban Revolution was initially, Fidel was a lawyer, Che was a doctor. I mean, these were people who had some privilege, some considerable privilege in the country, but under the Batista regime, basically the mafia and what today we would refer to as the billionaires owned and ran Cuba, and they overthrew them and said, we're going to create a society without billionaires, and in fact without multimillionaires. A couple of the things that one of the things that really struck me. In all the time we were there for a week, and we traveled all over Havana, and we went a little outside of Havana once. Almost all our time was in Havana. And I saw one beggar all the time I was there. And there's this huge, an old warehouse with probably 200 stalls in it, with individual, people, the small businesses where they're selling things that they've made, a lot of art, just all kinds of cool stuff, Cuban cigars, whatever. And it's one of their experiments in capitalism, as it were. And the one beggar I saw had perfect teeth. Everybody had perfect teeth. I mean, I literally didn't see anybody with teeth that looked like, they were having a problem with their teeth. And I was like, well, this is not West Virginia, right? This is not, or I don't mean to pick on West Virginia. This is not Michigan. This is not America. It's because so anyhow, I asked our tour guide, and he was like, well, yeah, dental care, your teeth are part of your body. We have free medical care here, and that includes free dental care. So everybody goes to the dentist, everybody, which was kind of cool. School is free. It's compulsory through the 9th grade, and then if you're going to go to college or into a trade school from 9th to 12th, it's all free. 9th to 12th, you can do that, and you prepare for your exams and everything. And then if you can pass the exams to get into college, college is free. And in fact, they've got 65,000 doctors in Cuba. It's one of their principal exports is doctors. I didn't see anybody who was morbidly obese. It was not like, just like walking into a Denny's here in the United States. people looked healthy. In fact, one of the people I was speaking with said, you know, we're really concerned that as the economy opens up, and particularly if the embargo is done away with, that as fast food comes to Cuba, obesity, type 2 diabetes, heart disease, all the things associated with fast food may be coming to Cuba as well. And probably the best solution to that is to educate people about the dangers of those kind of foods. But anyhow, also, if you graduate from college, you're guaranteed a job. The government is the employer of last resort. In fact, broadly, you're guaranteed a job. It's considered a right. The food was great. Their diet is, you know, it's very, very Spanish/European/Argentinian kind of, you know, it's not a good place to easily find a meal as a vegetarian, but, you know, and so the first day or two we were there, I ate fish and cheese, but then after that I discovered that I could just say, just leave off the fish or just leave off the pork or beef, because those were typically the choices, or chicken, and I'll take the vegetables. And it was fine. It was a lot of good food. And we ate at some of the new little restaurants that are, you know, in people's homes, maximum 50 seats. There was a piece in the New York Times that I was reading a couple days ago about how Cuba's cracking down on capitalism. And what was happening is they're trying to keep small businesses, they're trying to keep from having a big business problem. And so, you know, basically they said, your family, you may turn part of your house, your rooftop, your backyard, your living room, whatever you want, into a restaurant or into some other kind of small business, but not for more than 50 people. So you can serve 50 people. So what started happening was, you know, mom and dad would get a divorce, so they were separate entities, and then mom would get a permit for 50, and dad would get a permit for 50, and Junior would get a permit for 50, and, you know, Aunt Ethel would get a permit, and pretty soon you got 200 people and at that point the government says, no, wait a minute, we're moving down the road toward Walmart. This isn't going to happen. So that's my understanding of what's going on. Keep in mind, none of this is coming from an authoritative source. I was there for a week, but I'm just telling you what I saw, what I learned. The hotel we stayed in, the Vedado, which is a region, it's one of the older parts of Havana, was what here might be kind of like a comfort inn. It was a very inexpensive hotel. The Code Pink trips are a lot less expensive than some of the other ones. But it was nice. It was clean. The food was good. The buffet was spectacular. The other thing was the people. You know, there's just this sense. Louise and I have, you know, we used to own a travel agency, so for the 4 years, 5 years, however long it was that we owned the travel agency, we could go anywhere in the world for 25% of the normal cost of a ticket, and usually hotels would put us up for free. And so we took full advantage of that. And we've been around the world many, many times, and one of the things that we've always said is that the two friendliest places on earth, in our experience, and we've been in, I don't know how many countries, but the two friendliest countries in the world were Ireland and Thailand. In Ireland and Thailand, everyone is your best friend. I mean, it's just, they're just very, the culture itself is very outgoing. I add now to that list Cuba. People were wonderful. The streets were safe. At night, you could walk around. There was no problem with crime. It was only on the last day we were there I even saw a police officer, and he didn't have a gun. He had a billy club. And so, anyhow, I've got more on my list here. I will continue my stories about Cuba, and then I'll pick up your calls in just a minute. We'll be right back. It's coming up on 15 minutes past the hour. One of the interesting places we went in, because this was an entirely educational tour, we were literally, learning things all, every place, having a lot of lectures and meetings with students and teachers and all kinds of stuff. And there is a museum of literacy. One of the very first things that Fidel did after the revolution was basically to say, we have to begin with literacy. Every Cuban has to be literate. And they brought in thousands of volunteers to send them out to the countryside where illiteracy was really bad. And the literacy rate now in Cuba is the second highest in the world behind Switzerland. It's 97%. Only 3% of Cubans can't read or write. I don't know what the illiteracy rate in the United States is, but it's much higher than 3%. So they, and this was a big deal. I mean, and they set this as a multi-year goal, and they accomplished it in just a couple of years. It was quite amazing. And you'll recall, Thomas Jefferson talked about, the importance of being literate and reading and all those kind of things. Everybody there watches U.S. television programs. They watch U.S. movies. A person on the street can engage you in a conversation about, Leo DiCaprio or whatever. We watched CNN every night. CNN's on the air there. I don't know of any Cuban television on the air here. This is interesting. The hotel had internet, but the internet there is kind of in its early stages. It's sort of like what it was here maybe 10 years ago. Slow and not entirely reliable. But I used a virtual private network program, a VPN program, to be able to have an encrypted, secure link between my cell phone in the hotel and the United States, so that any information I passed through, passwords, whatever, would not show up on the Cuban side, and there was no problem. I could use VPN anywhere in Cuba. We flew from Havana to Orlando to pick up our flight home yesterday morning, and went to the airline club. And I'm a frequent flyer with one of the airlines, and so we got every year cash in some miles for a club membership. And the airline does not, they offer free Wi-Fi access in their club room, in their lounge, but you can't use a VPN. I was blocked from using a VPN. And I thought, this is weird. I mean, what does this airline want to know about everything that I'm doing on the internet? Why do they care? Or is it their ISP? Is this what happens when net neutrality dies? But the fact of the matter is that from Cuba, I could access more sites and do more things in the United States than I could from an airline lounge in Orlando. That was kind of strange. Pay equity for women. Women are absolutely paid the same as men. They are at 100% pay equity. Now, again, you never know with government statistics, right? And the government of Cuba is not the world's most transparent. And so, but everywhere we went, everybody we talked with at least a dozen women professors in different institutions, and all of them brought this up. They started a program a while back for paid sick leave. For decades, it was 6 months of maternity leave, and in the last year or two, they have expanded that to now be a full year, and the first 6 months is mom, and then the second 6 months is your choice. It could be mom, dad, older brother, whatever, but your job is absolutely guaranteed when you come back. And and I talked about the small businesses. So that and the weather was great, and there was no evidence at all of one of the world's worst hurricanes. They've got all their power back. Puerto Rico is still a stinking mess, and I say that compassionately, not critically. In large part because, well, there's a whole long list of becauses, but Cuba bounced back really fast from the hurricane, and I just saw no evidence of it at all. The other thing about the food I wanted to mention, when Louise and I lived in Washington D.C., because of where we lived and where we worked and everything, pretty much every day I would eat lunch in D.C. More often than not in one of the kind of fast food places, not McDonald's kind of things, but the kind of, this new generation of hip, healthy fast food that you see. I don't want to name any names because of the nature of the story I'm going to tell. And probably once a week, Louise and I would go out to dinner someplace in D.C. We really enjoyed living in D.C. It's a wonderful town. But at least every other week, I'd get food poisoning in Washington, D.C. And and I've traveled all over the world. I don't have a particularly sensitive stomach, but at least every other week, and sometimes, even once a week, I would come home, or in the morning it would be, the feeling, right? I ate everything in Cuba. Well, actually, I didn't eat any of the pork or chicken or beef, but I I ate everything else, and drank fresh fruits and fruit juices and plenty of mojitos, which seems to be the national drink. And I just say that because everywhere we went, somebody was saying, hey, would you like a mojito? And they were delicious. And I was just fine. You know, it was just some of the greatest food.